The Jedi live in a dream. An acolyte kills the dream.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Star Wars The Acolyte Episode 1 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references. I know there's lots of questions about what's going on in this part of the timeline. Why are they doing High Republic? Why not Old Republic? Or why not somewhere else in the timeline? So we'll break it all down. I'll be doing videos for all the episodes this season. My Episode 2 video will post later during Wednesdays, so be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. The actual episode title is Lost and Found. It's a reference to the twin sisters, May and Osha. Osha, who was taken by the Jedi to train at the temple, and May, who was left behind because they thought she was dead. Who at the end of the episode, Osha winds up seeing in a Force vision, learning that she's still alive in present day. The actual High Republic is an initiative kind of like Shadows of the Empire back during the 90s that Star Wars did for a period set after the Old Republic, but before the events of Phantom Menace, sort of in that middle part of the timeline, set between 500 years and 100 years before A New Hope. The show itself takes place about 100 years before Phantom Menace, so we're about 25 years away right here in present day from Palpatine being born, just to give you an idea of like where all the big characters are. Like Yoda is around during this period, he's Grand Master of the Jedi Council. Plo Koon is alive during this period. I believe we'll see him at some point during the series. And Vernestra Rwoh is like the only big character from the High Republic that they created for the High Republic that they're currently doing this season. They did say that the series was originally pitched as a trilogy, like a 3-season thing, and through each season we'll see more known Sith Masters that show up during this part of the canon, and other big people like Palpatine, for instance, eventually. My assumption is at some point they'll have to do some time jumps to explain the logic of how Palpatine can show up because he hasn't been born yet during the present day of the series. But you do have a couple long-lived characters who are around during this period, but like for instance, Grogu has not been born yet because he and Anakin Skywalker were born at the same time. Speaking of which, there is a lot of Phantom Menace vibes that this is leaning on. Like this is meant to show how things wind up the way they do and why we get to Order 66, the rise of the Sith, essentially.
The only conclusion can be that it was a Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennia.
So there's a lot of moments in the episode that reference things from Phantom Menace, both characters like Anakin Skywalker, they reference some Palpatine stuff that happened during the Jedi Council scenes. But just in general, this era of the Jedi Order is meant to be the absolute zenith for them. Like they were at their peak level of power and influence in the galaxy. There were thousands of Jedi active at this time. But as they say during the episode, there are political enemies of the Jedi that seek their downfall. That feels like a long-term Sith plan that eventually will culminate in Palpatine making it to the Senate. So for instance, Palpatine was not a senator before he became a Sith. He was a Sith, then he became a senator as part of their Sith plan. So this series feels like it's sort of seeding the beginning of that.
If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you will fail.
I know there's going to be a ton of questions about who that mysterious Sith Master is at the end because their voice was modulated under their helmet. There will be a lot of theories about that just because there are only a couple Sith Masters that we know about that could be around during this period. Have I ever told you the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? There's also Darth Tenebris, his master too. The main character's name is May, whose twin sister is Osha, both of whom were born to a coven of Force witches, which they reference a couple times in the episode. Mother Anastasia is their biological mother that you see during the trailer. She's also the leader of their coven. Together, the sisters are kind of like a Force dyad, kind of like the two brothers from the Old Republic game. Some of their scenes at the end also kind of seem like they're aping a little bit of the Force connection that Kylo Ren and Rey had during Last Jedi, talking across the galaxy through the Force. The official description of the characters talks about them existing in a yin-yang relationship because one of the sisters is more dark side leaning and Osha, for example, is more light side leaning. Early prediction is that at some point, pretty easy to guess, they will wind up having to fight each other. We'll talk a little bit more about the Force Coven of Witches that they come from in future episodes. They don't get too much into that during episode 1. But to be clear, they're not Night Sisters, like they're not from the Night Sisters Coven. But they start the episode with an opening title. It's not exactly an opening title crawl like a traditional Star Wars movie, but they did something similar like this during Ahsoka to set up what's happening in present day of the series. But they used standard blue Star Wars, like the blue title treatment here, as opposed to the Sith red during the Ahsoka series, which is interesting. It says 100 years before the rise of the Empire, so we're talking about Revenge of the Sith, Order 66. It is a time of peace. The Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic have prospered for centuries without war. The centuries that they're talking about is since the last Jedi-Sith war in the fall of the Old Republic. Very apropos because during this series we're talking about the return of the Sith. Notice the ominous music during the title treatment here, but in the dark corners of the galaxy, a powerful few learn to use the Force in secret. That's a reference to May and Osha's tribe of Force witches that they come from, but also to the Sith. Like, the Sith are a completely separate group that were also practicing quote-unquote in secret. But it sounds like Osha and May's Force coven was also something secret. One of them, a lone assassin, risks discovery to seek revenge. That's May, who you see at the beginning of the episode, seeking revenge for the death of her coven. The interesting thing about that, though, is what Soul says later in the episode, saying that May started the original fire that actually killed her entire family, so why would she be seeking revenge for killing her family? Like, why does she blame the Jedi for killing her family if she's the one that lit the fire? Methinks this is part of a Sith plot, like maybe the Sith Master had something to do with orchestrating what happened during that. Even though the episode tries to position the Jedi kind of like antagonists, like you did something wrong to us, like we were doing fine on our planet by ourselves until you came along. It feels like this might be part of a long-term Sith plan, pulling strings and using her as a pawn in their bid to take down the Jedi. The camera panning down to the planet is a standard move at the beginning of a lot of Star Wars movies, very common. They start on the planet Ueda, which is a brand new place to the Acolyte. It's never appeared in Star Wars before. There'll probably be a couple planets like that during the series that are completely new. Notice the architecture here. That's also a reference to Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art. There's references to this all over Star Wars in movies and the series.
Jedi do not attack the unarmed.
Yes, you do.
May comes in looking to kill Jedi Master Indara, played by Carrie-Anne Moss. Most people remember as Trinity from The Matrix. They have a full-on Kung Fu Matrix-style fight. Because we're in the Star Wars universe and we're talking about using the Force here, you could also make a reference to Terras Kasi, too. The fight itself is pretty solid, giving you an idea for what it's like for Jedi and Sith to have hand-to-hand combat fights using the Force to enhance their strikes. I don't know if her knives are meant to be out of a special material. They might be dipped in poison, because it is weird that a single knife strike kills Indara so quickly, yet Sabine can take a lightsaber right through the chest and just walk it off. May uses the bartender to distract Indara, which is a very Sith kind of move. Notice, though, she winds up taking Indara's lightsaber. This will be more important for later, because the Sith need to take the lightsaber crystal from a Jedi and bleed it red with their hate, like all their emotion poured into it to bleed it red in order to create their red lightsabers. There are no red crystals that exist naturally. So early theory, while she's on this mission for the Sith as the Acolyte, going around killing all of these Jedi, she's looking to create her own Sith lightsaber eventually. Then we get the actual Acolyte title. There's actually a lot of meaning baked into this design too. Notice it starts on the O shape, like a planet shape, and you have the blue and red existing in an eclipse kind of design. Like the red is eclipsing the blue. It's meant to represent the relationship between the twin sisters, one light side for blue, one dark side for red. Also, the way the series, just in general, will show the Sith eclipsing the Jedi, like the dark side beginning to eclipse the light side as we march our way towards Order 66. Then we jump to a scene of Osha, the other sister, on her ship over with the Trade Federation. She's a mechanic since leaving the Jedi Order. She says she left about 6 years ago, so she hasn't been gone that long, but she hasn't been using the Force in that whole 6 years. So it's kind of a Grogu kind of situation where Grogu is still very powerful in the Force, but because he spent so many years trying to hide himself in the Force, not using his abilities, his skills waned and just eventually got better as he continued to use them again and practice more. My early theory is that the same thing will happen with Osha, like she'll slowly begin to learn Jedi skills again. Like she still has the Force, she tries to use it during this episode, but doesn't successfully. That'll probably come back to her relatively quickly. If it wasn't clear, Amandla Stenberg, the main actor who's playing May, is also playing Osha. She's playing both roles, so they're meant to look like very identical twins. But early theory is also that as May continues to push deeper into the dark side in her Sith training, it will also cause her features to change, so they'll start to look a little bit different too eventually. Typically, the dark side begins to pervert people's body, like twist people's bodies. That's why Palpatine looks the way he does, because the dark side has consumed his body over time. So do not be surprised if May shows up in like season 2 or season 3 or however long the show winds up going, looking full-on goth. We meet her new droid called Pip, which sounds a lot like Pip-Boys from Fallout, and it kind of acts the same way like a Fallout Pip-Boy. It's a handheld droid that she carries around in her pocket and uses kind of like a tricorder, like a multi-function Swiss Army knife kind of droid. As she walks through her ship, this seems kind of like a variant or like a proto-version of a Gonk droid because it's making the same Gonk sounds. Her crewmate Philip mentions Nar Shaddaa, which is the home planet of the Hutts. We haven't actually gone there during the live-action movies yet. We find out that this is a Trade Federation ship. We see a couple of Nemoidians. I guess the idea is they own the ship, and she's just working for them, moving from ship to ship as she works for different people. She sees the fire, triggers a PTSD flashback to her childhood. It's the tragedy that led to the death of their coven that May blames the Jedi for. Like I said, the weird thing is that Soul says May actually lit the fire, so we'll see what they wind up explaining in future episodes when they clarify this with more flashbacks. Yord Fandar and his Padawan Tassi Loa come wearing customary temple robes for that era, looking for Osha. He's an old friend of hers when he was still a Padawan before she left. And this whole thing with them thinking she is the person that killed Indara is meant to be a reference back to the Clone Wars episode, The Wrong Jedi, which was when Ahsoka is wrongly blamed by the Jedi Council for causing a bunch of trouble that Barriss Offee was really responsible for. During that episode, the Jedi Council basically kicks Ahsoka out and then apologizes after the truth is learned, and she winds up feeling so betrayed and so disillusioned with the Jedi that she leaves the Order herself and becomes a mechanic, kind of like Osha became a mechanic. So you're meant to see a lot of similarities between Osha and Ahsoka's character. When he mentions CorpSec, that's the corporate sector of the galaxy in the Outer Rim. It was governed by the Corporate Sector Authority. They mentioned that during the Andor series. They also use this Q&A with her when they start grilling her with questions to fill in the audience on her backstory, like, you were taken by the Jedi when you were 8 years old. This is where you came from. This is what was going on. A lot of you probably clocked the fact when they started talking about her being too old to become a Jedi, being a callback to Anakin Skywalker during Phantom Menace, thinking that he was too old because he was about the same age when Qui-Gon Jinn wanted to bring him to the Jedi Order and start training him. All this talk about the tragedy in her backstory, her mourning when she came to the Jedi, is meant to be a reference to what happened with Anakin Skywalker having to leave his mother, also his mother dying, how that led to his eventual future falling to the dark side. Lot of Phantom Menace and Anakin Skywalker references here. You notice later in the episode too, many characters in all the scenes at the Jedi Temple talk about the problems with attachment, like, why are you looking at old hollows? That's all about attachment. We don't want that. When we actually travel back to Coruscant and see the Jedi Temple, remember, this is 100 years before the Battle of Yavin, notice that the temple looks like it's actually a little bit higher, like it sits higher on the Coruscant city top level, but that's actually a bit of a trick, because by the time of Phantom Menace, the Coruscant top level of the city had grown so much, like remember, it's just city layers built on top of other city layers. The city itself kept on growing, expanding, so the temple in present day just looks smaller. The actual temple size has not changed. We meet Master Soul, played by Lee Jung-jae, most people will remember from Squid Game. His speech about eyes deceiving you is meant to be a reference to this whole mistaken twin identity with May and Osha, like, look deeper, what you see is probably not what's actually going on. Then we see Vernestra Rwoh come in. She's from the High Republic comics and the novels they've been publishing. She's meant to be the same race as Barriss Offee. During this period, she's become a Jedi Master, and she's one of the leaders on the Council. Notice when she walks in, though, she actually uses the Force to open the temple door. That's a really clever trick to keep people from running around too much into too many different rooms where they're not supposed to be. When the child mentions balance in the Force, that's also a callback to the sisters being both dark side and light side, like the balance that the two of them represent. The little girl who also sees fire growing and consuming everything seems like a bit of a red flag, too. Like, what do you see? Oh, I see a field of flowers. What about you? What do you see? I see a giant fire with everybody dying horribly.
I see fire. It grows larger. It consumes anything that tries to stop it.
Well, okay, let's move on to the next lesson then. Maybe we should pause for a second and focus on this vision you're getting. When she says she remembers Soul as a youngling, that's because, like I said, she is from a very long-lived race. Not nearly as long-lived as, say, like Yoda or Plo Koon, but still longer than a normal human. She fills him on Master Indara's death in the belief that they think Osha, his former Padawan, did it. And he is correct in thinking this is a mistake, like, no, she's a gentle soul, she'd never do this, she's very loyal to the Jedi, even though she left. More callbacks to that Ahsoka episode of the Clone Wars, The Wrong Jedi. Notice they talk about the political enemies using this incident against the Jedi, like if they learn that one of the Jedi's own killed one of their masters, then we're in for it. I think this is meant to be part of the Sith's long-term plan to eventually discredit and destroy the Jedi. Like this is the beginning of a long-term plan that Palpatine just took over and made his own plan when he joined the Senate and became the new Sith Master. So it wasn't like he came up with this whole ultimate long-term plan for Order 66. It's something that another Sith Master started and he just took on as his own plan and then evolved into something a little bit different. All the other prisoners on Osha's ship pull and escape, throwing her under the bus, even the person she tries to save, the violent criminal, so they really want to show you that she is a good person, ultimately, unlike her sister May. Then we meet Jecki Lawn back at the temple, played by Daphne Keene. Most of you remember as X-23 from Logan. She's also probably going to show up during Deadpool and Wolverine too. She is the current Padawan to Soul. His warning to her, if we don't meditate on the past, we're doomed to repeat it, feels like a direct call-out to Phantom Menace, with the Council not believing that the Sith are a problem. Like, they haven't been around for 1,000 years. This couldn't be a Sith. There's no way. Even though Qui-Gon Jinn has very clear evidence that it was a Sith. When they start interrogating the other prisoners to find out what happened to Osha with the prison break, they find out about the ice planet Karlak. That was actually featured during Clone Wars. We get our first of what will probably be many May the Force be with you of this series. It would be weird if there was a new Star Wars series with Jedi characters, even non-Jedi characters, that at some point didn't use that phrase. Then Osha starts to see Force visions of her sister, who she previously thought was dead. She realizes she's alive. But the way they play it, they actually play it like the Force dyad scenes from Last Jedi with Kylo Ren and Rey. Like they're actually talking to each other across the galaxy. This isn't just a one-sided Force vision. That might have something to do with the fact that they're Force twins. They actually kind of got into this during the Expanded Universe novels back in the day in the 90s with Leia and Han's original twins that were both Force sensitive. They had like a special Force twin connection that went beyond just like normal Jedi abilities. Leslie Halen, the showrunner for the series, is actually a longtime stan of the Expanded Universe stuff. Like she's about that right age, she grew up with the Expanded Universe. So do not be surprised if she winds up working in some of the lore from the Expanded Universe into the series, the same way that Dave Filoni does with a lot of his series. Soul and Jecki get Yord as backup. She makes it sound like she likes him, like they're really good friends, and clowns on him on the regular. And I think this is meant to be a new view of the Jedi Temple landing bays. We'll probably do that during the series because we'll see the temple so much. Like they'll give you different views of different rooms and different areas that we haven't visited before in the temple. Osha travels deeper into her Force visions, seeing more PTSD flashbacks of the fire on her home planet, her sister, and learns the truth from her. Her sister did kill Indara and plans to kill all the Jedi. Then we get Soul explaining his backstory with Osha, meeting her 16 years ago when he was posted like a normal Jedi Ranger on her planet by the Jedi Order. He says that her sister May, like I said, started the fire that killed her entire coven of Force witches. So this is the big question, like, what are they going to explain? Like, is it the Sith that just manipulating May to make her think that the Jedi were responsible for this? Or did the Sith Master influence her to start the fire when that originally happened the first time? How long has the Sith Master been pulling her strings, pushing her around the board, so to speak? And you notice that both Yord and Soul clock the fact that she had a twin, and you can kind of see the gears turning in their heads, like he doesn't want to believe it immediately until Osha tells him later, my sister May, she is alive, so clearly she's responsible for all this. Which he then believes. When he said he thought that he saw May die in the fire, that's meant to be a callback to the speech he just gave the younglings about your eyes deceiving you, which clearly happened to him at the time because clearly she survived somehow. I think the idea that initially she's running from the Jedi here, even if she was willing to submit to them earlier, is because she just learned in her vision that her sister's alive, and she wants to find out what's going on with her sister before she's taken into custody, because she doesn't think that they'll help her after she is taken in. But because Soul is there and she came clean to him, it sounds like he'll help advocate for her, even though the other Jedi might not initially believe her about this whole twin business. Like, twin, that seems like a convenient excuse. It just feels like they really want to paint the Jedi in a more negative light, like very intractable, not willing to believe people. But as they get a more happy reunion, Master and former Padawan, we see May go back to this other planet and meet the Sith Master, whose voice is modulated, so we don't know if it's a male or a female, if it's like Darth Tenebris or it's Darth Plagueis or somebody else. Basically heralding May as the new Sith apprentice with a speech about becoming the Acolyte, like being able to take down the Jedi, not with a weapon, like with a lightsaber, like that wouldn't be successful, but as an Acolyte, you can take them down. Basically a dark side Acolyte, a Sith Acolyte. Overall, the episode was pretty solid, but I actually think that episode 2 is going to be a little bit better. Like the episodes will get a little bit better as we go through episode 4 or 5. Nobody's really seen past episode 4. Reviewers have been talking pretty highly about episodes 3 and 4 though. So we'll see if the series can stick the landing because nobody knows what's going on in the back half of the series yet. The early theory, though, is they're using this series to explain why the Force prophecy about the one, like the chosen one, why Anakin Skywalker had to be born in the first place. Why would the Force create him if there needed to be balance in the Force? What happened to cause this imbalance? I think as we get a little bit deeper into the episodes, we'll also start seeing some more cameo scenes from familiar characters, too. If there's any other Easter eggs or references that you spotted in episode 1 that I didn't talk about in the video, write them below in the comments. Like I said, my episode 2 video will be up later on Wednesday, so make sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for that. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for all my Star Wars Acolyte episode videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.